Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently, who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Our mention of Charles Manson will be brief. He died recently at the age of 83, and we're not going to waste too much time on him because we did the Helter Skelter podcast with Vincent Bugliosi, because Charles Manson has gotten way too much publicity, and because we don't want to glorify him. And in fact, as is our policy, we're only going to show you one picture of him. The rest of the brief report will show pictures of his victims. And speaking of his victims, one of the questions I have is how we can have a legal system that allows him to live almost 50 years longer than those victims, write to his fan clubs, give them autographs, and provide bootleg tapes of his songs and rotten music. And along with that, his chief assassin, Tex Watson, was allowed to marry in prison and father 4 children. Remember, Sharon Tate didn't get to have her first child. And on top of that, for the most part, his women showed no remorse except when they were coming up for parole. And besides our legal system, what about our society that puts him on the cover of Rolling Stone? Marilyn Manson and Guns N' Roses record his music. People like John Lennon are almost apologetic about him, and he was a cult hero to people like Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers of the Weathermen, who made their salute the 3-fingered prong as a tribute to the fork that the Manson family killed Sharon Tate with. These are people who hobnobbed with the President of the United States and have important positions in law and academia. And the interviews and the film treatments never stop. It's patently disgusting. And anybody who doesn't think so should do some long soul searching. That's all we'll say about that monster other than remember the victims. We're going to move away from that distasteful subject to our far more uplifting feature. By way of introduction, there's this.
I've been touched by an angel, really touched by an angel. I have hope, I have choice, since I heard that voice telling me all is well. I've been touched by an angel, deeply touched by an angel.
Well, our subject is Della Reese, who died recently at the age of 86. One of the most intelligent and talented people around. You know, she died around the same time as Charles Manson. He got all the publicity, but she's the one who should have got it. I like to think of her as a much smarter and much more talented Oprah. She could act, she could sing, and she was brilliant. Born in the Black Bottom section of Detroit, same section as Sugar Ray Robinson and Joe Louis. She went to Cass Tech, same class as Ellen Burstyn, and we also did Jerry Allen, who's from Cass Tech. And Della Reese graduated when she was 15 years old. When she was a girl, she sang with Mahalia Jackson for a while, and then she went on her own, and here's what she sounded like.
Rising star on the theatrical horizon, whose records are slowly but surely creeping to the top of the list, is our next guest. Here she is, the talented Della Reese. In the still of the night, as I gaze from my window at the moon in its light, my thoughts are striving in the still of the night.
Yeah, she could sing anything and sing it well, and she actually had a big top 5 hit in the late 50s on a song based on Musetta's Waltz from Puccini's La Boheme.
Don't you know I have fallen in love with you for the rest of my whole life through. Don't you know I was yours from the very day that you happened to come my way.
Well, with her intelligence, she transitioned easily into television. She had her own talk show for a while. She was on Chico and the Man with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Jack Albertson, and she was a guest hostess on The Tonight Show. When Johnny Carson interviews you to be a host on The Tonight Show, he's looking for smart people. She was actually the second female guest host after Joan Rivers, and the first black female guest host, and she was really good at it too. She went on to do a show on television with Redd Foxx, her friend of 40 years, and she was one of the people who appreciated not only how brilliant a comedian he was, but also what a wonderful person he was, and he wasn't always paid back in kind by the people he worked for. And unfortunately, Della Reese was on the set the day that Redd Foxx died. Turns out her producer was giving Redd a hard time.
I'm one of the producers, and I can tell you how to be funny if I want to. And Redd was saying, you don't even know funny, so you can't tell me something you don't even know. And that was the undercurrent all the time. This particular day, Entertainment Tonight came to interview Redd. And so we're rehearsing a scene, and all Redd had to do was walk across the back of my chair. We're not shooting, we're rehearsing a scene. Of course, they sent someone to walk back. And this man says, "Where is Redd?" And I said, "He's having an interview with Entertainment Tonight." I said, "But he doesn't have any lines here. He just has to walk. If he's supposed to walk past, he should be in here to walk past." So he goes in there, stops their shooting, and brings Redd out. And when Redd gets out there and finds out all he has to do is walk across the back of this that anybody could have done, he becomes livid and he falls. Well, he was always doing pratfalls. And I thought that's what he did. Everybody thought that's what he did. And he was laying on the floor, and I leaned down to him and I put my hands on him. He said, "Get my wife, get my wife." I said, "Somebody get paramedics and somebody go get Mrs. Foxx." And they went and got her. And they put him in the ambulance, and we all got in our cars and followed him to the hospital. And he came back and stayed for 4.5 hours. Now we're all sitting in the lobby of the hospital. The doctor comes out and says, "Mrs. Foxx, we've done all that we can do, and your husband is gone." Standing this close were two of the producers, and they said, "What are we going to do with this script? This script was written for Redd and Della. Who are we going to get to? Who's going to replace?" She said, "Right here." They just told her that her husband was dead. And I went crazy. I went absolutely insane on everybody. They never did treat him with the respect that he should have had.
Well, our younger cohort is going to know Della Reese best for her role as Tess on the series Touched by an Angel. She was the angelic supervisor who sent the other angels out on missions to help people redeem their lives and show them God's love. While at the same time she was sassy and had a no-nonsense attitude. Della Reese happened to be an ordained minister in real life, and here she tells how she got the role on Touched by an Angel.
They introduced us to Martha Williamson. She had been writing, I don't even remember, Give Me a Break or some kind of show like that. She was going to be the producer and the head writer. In this meeting, she walked directly up to me and she said, "This is going to be a story, and we're going to use the word God. Can you live with that?" And I just started laughing. I just really started laughing. She says, "Well, why are you laughing?" I said, "Because you haven't done your homework. If you've done your homework, you know how I feel about God." So we had the meeting, and we started home. And I said to my husband, "I don't want to do this." And I told him, I said, because I'm back in the same situation I was in with Redd. And I promised God and 2 other people I'm never going to do this again. He said, my husband said, "Well, I don't know, babe. I got a feeling about this. And I think you ought to talk to God about this." So I came home here. I went in the bedroom. I closed the door. I got up in the middle of my bed and I started talking to the Father. I said, "You know how I feel about this. I appreciate this that you put in my path, but I'd rather you give me something else. I don't want to do this. You know how I am. You know I'll go whatever. And as clearly as you hear me speaking to you, in my empty bedroom, the voice said to me, 'Do this for me.'" And at that time, I thought I was smarter than God, so I tried to break it down so he would understand it. I went back into prayer, and I prayed anew, and I said, "What you don't understand is silence." There was no answer to it, and I understand it was stupid, but there was no answer to it. And I sat there, and I sat there, and I sat there. And when I stopped making these foolish sounds with my mouth and started to listen with my spirit, the voice repeated, "Do this for me, and you can retire if you want to in 10 years.
Della Reese, a wonderful person. We're going to move on now to 2 tennis players who are both in the International Tennis Hall of Fame. The first is Pancho Segura, who died recently at the age of 96. Pancho Segura was born in Ecuador. He was taught tennis by his father, who gave him a heavy racket when he was a little boy, so he had to play with two hands. He came to the United States in 1939, went to the University of Miami, where he was taught by his coach, Gardner Malloy, whose podcast we've done. He was a top amateur in the 40s, and even better, barnstorming as a pro in the 50s and into the 60s. He was actually the #1 player in the world in 1950 for 2 years. As a tennis player, Pancho Segura was known for a couple of things. First was that strong two-hand forehand. Jack Kramer, who was one of his frequent opponents, called it the single greatest shot in tennis history. Pancho Segura was also known for liking to have fun on the court. He used to do all sorts of crazy stuff, but a lot of that was a sight game, because another thing he was known for was his cerebral approach to the game. He studied every opponent meticulously, noting strengths and weaknesses. And this served him in his most famous role. After he was done playing competitively, he moved to Los Angeles and became part of the Los Angeles Tennis Club, where a lot of the top players in the world would practice, and he became a teaching pro. A lot of players enlisted him, but the most famous was Jimmy Connors, the brat from Belleville. His mother, Gloria, enlisted Pancho Segura to teach Jimmy Connors the finer points of the game, and he made him the #1 player in the world. If you watch film of Pancho Segura, you can see a lot of it in Jimmy Connors' game. He didn't teach him to be an obnoxious brat, but he did teach him how to psych out opponents, and a lot of what Jimmy Connors did on the court was the result of Pancho Segura's long experience. And in 1984, Pancho Segura was elected to the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Our second player is Jana Novotna, who died recently at the age of 49. She's probably known better for her defeats than her victories, but she did win Wimbledon in 1998, and she was clearly one of the top female tennis players in the world in the 1990s. Here's a report from Al Jazeera on Jana Novotna.
Jana Novotna became Wimbledon champion during a decade of high quality in the women's game. Using an effective serve and volley style, the Czech player helped her nation win the Federation Cup in 1988 and was a familiar name in the 90s alongside the likes of Steffi Graf, Monica Seles and Mary Pierce, playing in some classic matches. She became most famous for her tears in defeat. In the 93 Wimbledon final, she led 4-1 in the final set against the formidable Graf before her game disintegrated and she lost. She captured hearts of tennis fans when she cried on the shoulder of the Duchess of Kent, a member of the British royal family. She also lost the 97 Wimbledon final and seemed destined to remain a bridesmaid. But her big day was to come a year later, beating Natalie Tauzier in straight sets on the famous grass, a delayed and deserved triumph that delighted millions. Novotna won all 4 Grand Slam tournaments in ladies' doubles, 12 overall and 16 including mixed doubles. She was also an Olympic medalist in 88 and 96. She retired in 99 and was inducted into the International Tennis Hall of Fame.
Winning Wimbledon and becoming a Grand Slam champion is the greatest thing ever, but don't forget, tennis pretty much gave me everything and gave me the opportunity to travel, to speak another language and just, to be a different kind of person, and that's the one thing that I will always appreciate and treasure.
She was a popular member of commentary teams along with doubles partner Martina Navratilova. Jana Novotna is most remembered for those tears on Wimbledon's centre court, but also as a champion.
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. We're going to close tonight with Malcolm Young, who died recently at the age of 64. He was the leader and founding force behind the rock band AC/DC. One of those coincidences, we did his brother George's podcast about 2 weeks ago, and I mentioned Malcolm offhandedly. They were 10-pound poms. They were born in Scotland and encouraged to emigrate to Australia through the cheap fare. George became the founder of the Easy Beats, one of the first big Australian rock bands. Malcolm and another brother, Angus, witnessed the girls and the excitement around George and the Easy Beats, and they decided to form their own rock band in 1973, and that became AC/DC. So you could say that because of the Beatles, George founded the Easy Beats, and because of the Easy Beats, Malcolm founded AC/DC. Now, truth be told, I'm not a big AC/DC guy, but the opening to their anthem song, Thunderstruck, is what the White Sox use when they take the field at whatever they're calling their stadium these days. So in memory of Malcolm Young and in honor of the Chicago White Sox, Sid, and my friend and fellow White Sox fan Paul Groh, here's a little bit of Thunderstruck.